Let's jump right into this explainer. We're breaking down the myth versus the math of building wealth. A lot of people think getting rich is all about overnight success, right? Like you just need a massive inheritance or to hit the lottery or get incredibly lucky. But honestly, for the vast majority of wealthy people, that's just not reality. It's actually about years of consistent effort, having the right mindset, and making really smart decisions. Building wealth is a journey, not a secret shortcut. And to really understand how we get this so wrong, we actually have to start by looking at a pretty strange story from World War II.
Okay, picture this. It's 1943, and the US military is losing bombers over Europe at just a catastrophic rate. They desperately need to add armor to these planes. So they study the bombers that actually make it back, and they notice all these bullet holes are mostly in the wings and the fuselage. The obvious fix, right? Put armor exactly where the bullet holes are. But then a mathematician named Abraham Wald steps in and asks this brilliant, simple question. Where are the missing planes? See, he realized that the returning planes were actually showing where a bomber could take a hit and survive. The planes that didn't make it back, they were the ones getting hit in the engines and the cockpit. If they had armored the bullet holes on the survivors, it would have been a massive, fatal mistake.
And that right there is a textbook example of survivorship bias, focusing on the survivors and completely ignoring the ones that didn't make it. The crazy thing is, we do this exact same thing with our money. We study the financial returning planes. We watch all these videos about a billionaire's 4 a.m. morning routine, or their ice baths, or the stories of dropping out of college to bet the entire farm on one startup. But here's the catch. We're basically copying the 5% of risk takers who actually survived, while totally ignoring the massive invisible graveyard of the 95% who crashed and burned doing the exact same thing. True wealth isn't about mimicking extreme outliers. It's about understanding the basic math of financial survival and avoiding these incredibly common, socially acceptable traps that keep us broke. Which brings us to trap number 1, the dream home.
So we often get stuck doing things that look like, responsible, societal success. Buying that dream home is a huge one. It feels like buying a new identity. But the real estate industry is really good at fusing this emotional dream with a transaction that basically blinds us to the actual math. Let's look at Diana. She buys an $812,000 home. Her $3,940 monthly mortgage, that was literally just the cover charge. Because she bought a bigger house, her utility bills absolutely surged. Bigger homes leak more heat, right? Her insurance tripled. The standard 1% maintenance rule kicked in almost immediately. Then you stack on property tax reassessments, aggressive HOA fees, and going into debt just to furnish all those empty rooms. That manageable mortgage was actually hiding a staggering total annual cost of over $96,000. It was literally eating up 69 cents of every single dollar she earned.
But wait, it gets worse. The most dangerous hidden number here is the opportunity cost. Diana put down $162,000 in cash. Now imagine if that down payment hadn't been locked up in a single illiquid asset. If she had just put it in a low-cost S&P index fund for 20 years, letting it compound at historical averages, she essentially missed out on almost $1 million in unearned growth. Everyone told her what she was spending, but literally no one told her what she was giving up.
And that flows perfectly into trap number 2, the illusion of safe cash. We have this habit of treating a savings account like it's the ultimate financial finish line. Why? Because the balance never drops. It feels so safe. But in reality, inflation is just quietly evaporating your purchasing power every single day. Take Greg and Grace. They work at the same company, have the same job, even live in the same apartment building. Greg hits a safety cushion of $41,000 and just leaves it in cash, super proud of his discipline. Grace, on the other hand, lives below her means, keeps a safety cushion, but makes the really smart move to automate everything else into investments. Fast forward a decade, Greg still has $41,000, but it buys way less than it used to. Grace? She's sitting on over $300,000. Saving money is crucial for security, absolutely. But saving on its own is honestly just a slow, polite way to get poorer. Investing is what actually creates wealth.
Just look at how the top 1% distribute their wealth. The wealthiest households keep roughly 2% of their net worth in cash. That's it. Everything else, businesses, stocks, real estate, is out there working for them. They understand that cash is a waiting room. It is not the destination. It's an on-ramp. But unfortunately, most people get on the ramp and just never merge into traffic.
So how do we fix this? That brings us to the pivot, crossing the financial line.
If you want to stop your money from just pooling up like a puddle of stagnant water, you have to treat your emergency fund as a very strict border. We call this the line. It's usually about 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, the wealthy do not treat this number as a savings goal to endlessly add to.
Everything up to that line stays in cash because its only job is safety. But everything past that line, it is absolutely not allowed to just sit there. Its job is growth. You touch the line, keep your safety net secure, and push every single overflow dollar right over the edge so it can get to work. Now, before you start pushing that overflow, you have to make sure your safety cash, the money up to the line, is actually doing its job right. It needs to be in a real high-yield savings account. Because if you're banking with one of those giant traditional brick-and-mortar banks, you are literally earning pennies. But a quick warning, don't just blindly chase the highest yield you see. Look at this checklist from a saver named Curtis. He almost lost 30 grand because he chased a tiny fraction of a percent in one of those slick, non-bank financial apps. When the middleman company went bankrupt, thousands of people were locked out of their FDIC-insured funds because the ledgers were a mess. So always make sure your high-yield account is with an actual chartered bank. Check the tax implications for your specific state, and double-check that the rate actually applies to your entire balance, not just a promotional chunk of it.
All right, once you cross the line, it's time for the boring wealth machine.
Building real wealth is rarely about picking the next hot stock or crypto coin. It's actually about following a very specific, mathematical order of operations for your overflow dollars. Step 1, get your employer match. A 4% match on a retirement account is literally a 100% immediate return on your money before the market even opens. Step 2, crush any toxic debt, like those 20% interest credit cards. Step 3 is maxing out a health savings account, or HSA, if you qualify. It is basically a stealth retirement account that is completely tax-free. And finally, step 4, funnel whatever is left into low-cost index funds. But just knowing the steps isn't enough, right? The real secret weapon here isn't willpower, it's automation. Look at the numbers. When companies make employees manually opt into a retirement plan, participation hovers around 64%. But when they make it the automatic default, it skyrockets to 94%. By setting up an automatic transfer the day after you get paid, you are completely taking your own tired, emotional brain out of the equation. Automation stops you from overspending at the checkout counter, and it quietly stops you from panic selling when the stock market inevitably takes a dip. Now, when you are setting up those automated investments, there is one tiny number you absolutely must look out for: the 1% management fee. It's dressed up to look like professional sophistication, and it sounds completely harmless. Just 1%, right? Well, if you invest $10,000 over 30 years, that tiny 1% fee will silently devour roughly $40,000 of your future returns compared to a cheap index fund. You are essentially paying someone a premium to likely underperform the market. Buy a cheap, total market index fund and keep that money for yourself. Over your lifetime, that little 1% fee is literally worth an entire small house.
And that brings us to the climax, the math of compounding.
The engine that makes this entire boring wealth machine actually run relies on one massive, unfair advantage, and that is time. The most expensive mistake you can make isn't picking the wrong mutual fund, it's waiting. Let's say you invest just $500 a month at a historical 7% return, starting at age 25. You'd end up with nearly $1.4 million by the time you're 65. But if you wait just 10 years and start at age 35, you end up with only $740,000. Think about that. That 10-year delay didn't just cost you the $60,000 in deposits that you skipped. It literally destroyed roughly $700,000 in future wealth.
In the beginning, compounding feels like a total scam. It just crawls along and you feel like you're getting nowhere. But compounding isn't addition, it is acceleration. It bends upward violently over time because your investments start generating earnings, and then those earnings start generating their own earnings. It rewards patience. And that is exactly why every single dollar you delay investing is basically going into a graveyard of money that never got the chance to grow up.
So, we've seen that the real path to wealth isn't some secret morning routine. It's not locking all your cash into a massive lifestyle anchor like a giant house. And it's definitely not letting inflation slowly bleed your savings dry. It's a system. It is establishing your line of safety and relentlessly pushing the overflow into a machine that compounds over time. So I want to leave you with this to think about. Look at your own money right now, today. Is it actively working for your future, or is it just sitting there at the edge of the line, waiting for a permission that you haven't given it yet?